That's totally fine. You ready, Andrew? Hand off mouse. So, am I recording? Yes, I'm recording. I'm going to do a basic generic setup for any kind of multi-page presentation, whether it be a folio or something like your VM manual or anything like that. InDesign is the program for it. As soon as you're creating something multi-page, you want to go to InDesign. Illustrator lets you do multiple pages, but it's not very good at letting you manage those multiple pages. It's more designed for if you're doing like a series of posters or a series of postcards, not a book. Yeah, that really is where you need to come to InDesign. You're always choosing document. It might be tempting to choose book, but that's no good for you. You are always going document in InDesign. Start off with your intent, which is going to be print, and that's just going to set things up for you so that they're high res, CMYK, etc. Choose your size. I'm going to go for A4. Your orientation. Now margins, these are the pink guidelines here. These are here purely for you to line up your designs to. What you might do is if you look at an example and you see that there's a lot of white space around things or there's a lot of space, you might measure those margins and pop them in. Often as a starting point, I'll jump up to 20 mil. Just as a basic kind of thing. But you might want more or you might like less. You can go outside of these margins, but the idea is that if you're sitting inside the page with any of your images or text, line it up to there so that you create consistency throughout the document. Yep.
Can you not use a margin?
You can, but you're probably going to want to. It's going to give you something to create consistency. You could set your margins to 0, in which case it'll look like that, but it's likely that that's going to leave you creating a document that just looks a bit kind of out. Okay. Now, if you're using a binding technique where you're going to lose something in the spine, for example, if you're doing Japanese binding and you're going to lose an extra bit there, then you might want to factor that into your margins here. So if I uncheck this, let's say I'm doing Japanese binding, I might take that up to 30 or 40 mil or something. And that will give me that space on the inner area so that when I do bind it, things look like they're lined up. Classic mistake here. Yeah, she's not taken the bind into account, so when she's centered her logo on the page, but it looks off center because she didn't take that into account. Yeah, so it's a good idea to do that. And finally, bleed, standard bleed, 3 mil. That's your red lines here. If you're going to the edge of the page with anything, you need to take your images out to the edge. Open your eyes, Andrew. I know my voice is calming. But take it out to the red lines. That's going to be trimmed off, and that way you won't get little white frames around things. Number of pages. You can add these later, but you might want to start off with 20, for example. Facing pages means you're producing something like a book where you've got page here and a page here. Most of you will want facing pages. Okay? Every now and then someone does something that requires not facing pages. Primary text frame, that'd be if you were writing like a book kind of thing and everything just flows from one page to the other. We don't want that for this, so you'll leave that turned off. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, let's say okay. Now, I'm going to start to place my images in here. You don't want to copy and paste images into InDesign because they'll be embedded in the document. If they're embedded in the document, there's two problems. One problem is that document is going to be really big If you're using Illustrator, chances are your images are being embedded and your document's getting really big and your file's going to start to slow down. So instead, we want to place our images. The other problem with the image being embedded, you cannot edit it. It doesn't exist as a file outside, so if you need to go and retouch something in your image, you can't do it. Okay, so I'm going to go and select an image here and say open. I don't want it on my front page, and maybe I'll leave the second page for some contents or something. I'm going to come down here. Now I can just click, or I prefer to click and drag to put that image down, because that way I get to set its size. You can also, I'm going to go place another image now. If I keep this selected and go to File and Place, the new image will go into that box. So I need to deselect it. File, Place. You can also select multiple images. I'll get, not those ones, I'm holding Command here so I can choose a couple of different images. Say Open. And see how now there's a little number there, number 4. So I can now come in, I can drop various images in different places. And again, I always like to click and drag. See how it's giving me a horizontal box but a vertical image? That's usually if there's rotation happening inside the camera and it doesn't translate properly. Okay, so now working with images up here. First of all, if I grab the bounding box and pull it in, I'm not scaling, I'm cropping. So this is good because you can come in and say, right, well I want to crop that image down so it's just the cheese board like this. And here's a really common thing as well. These bay displays with the sides, no good. If you'd watched my how to photograph bay displays video, as I instructed you guys very early in the game, then you shouldn't have any of this because you'll be zooming your cameras in and using a narrow camera angle, and you'll be avoiding those sides. But bay displays, you're much better trimming it in like this than, even if it means you're chopping out a little bit of the display, it just looks much better like that than if you're seeing those sides in as well. Don't fall asleep, Alejandro. Must be something about the tone of my voice. Either that or you just find this very boring. Now, if I do want to scale an image, who remembers what you need to do? Not quite. Someone said Shift, but there's something else. Command Shift. So on a Mac, Command Shift. On a PC, Control Shift. And now, instead of cropping, it will scale. So I can scale that image. Now, the circle in the middle, what's that for?
That moves like the actual photo.
That moves the image within the frame. Yeah? So this is what I'm looking, this is what that allows me to do. If I click on that, it activates the bounding box of the image itself, and now I can do stuff like this. Now I can scale the image within the frame. So that's useful sometimes as well. Cropping in on things can make them look really nice. So it's more complicated working with images in InDesign, but you've got much more kind of options for working with them there. Now, did I do paragraph styles with you guys? Yeah? Quick refresher on that. If you're doing captions and titles and all of that kind of thing, you want to keep them consistent. So, I'm going to make some text. I'm going to style that text. I'm going to choose a size. I'm going to choose a font. I'm going to choose a color. And this is how I want all of my headings now to look. So, by default, you won't see your, what will it be? Essentials. By default, you won't see your paragraph styles options here. You need to go to Window, Workspace, Advanced. And now you get them. I'll just tuck this out so you can read them. Paragraph styles. So, first I make the style. I highlight it, make a new one, double click on it, call it heading. Yeah, I just made the style. Now I can apply the style. So I come up here, I make my next heading, blah 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 blah, and then I just say that's a heading. Yeah, up here, blah 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 blah, heading. Okay, this one's got overset text. The text isn't fitting in the box, so I need to make the box bigger. Okay. Now, once you've made the style, the whole point of making it is so that when you inevitably go back and change your mind about something, you just go back to the style, make sure you turn on preview, and you change it here. So now when I change my font, for example, that's not a very good one, is it? They all change. Okay? When I go and change my color, they all change. When I realize when I do a test print that all of my text is way too big and I change my size, it all changes. That's the whole point of doing styles. The other thing that you're probably going to want to know, and this is, Alejandro's saying this is like, it just feels boring. Maybe you need to bring in some design elements. If you want to put something on every page, a logo or a graphic or a page number or something like that, you go to your Pages palette. In your Pages palette, you've got all your pages, and this is where you can go to pages. This is where you can delete pages or add new pages or rearrange pages by dragging and dropping them. This is what you can't do in Illustrator, alright? So this is all good, but up above the line I've got my A master, and this is where I come and say, right, I want a little kind of corner triangle up the top of all of my pages. That is the color of my branding, and that's going to look cool, and now that's on every page. So now when I go and have a look at it like this, yep, I've got that element in there. Page numbers. You will also want to do on your master page. You just make a text box, you might do those under your margin. Right click and insert a special character. Markers, current page number. Okay, it's, oops, I'm not on my master page anymore. Go back. You want to do this on your master page so that it appears on every page. Right click, special character, markers, current page number. It'll appear as an A. And I can style this up here however I want it. Put that over to the right. And if you want it to appear on both pages, you can just copy that one over and stick it on the other page as well. I'll align that one over this way. Now when I go back to my regular pages, each one will have its own little thing. Okay. That's the basis of what you need to know in terms of putting things together in InDesign. Let me mention a couple of things that you need to be aware of. Open your eyes up again, Andrew. Things you need to be aware of. When you place images and they're linked, the image exists out in that folder, right? If you have a look in links, you'll see there's all the images I've put in, okay? And here's a good thing. If I select an image here, or I can just select it here as well, down here you get all this info. Your image might look pixelated in InDesign, but it might still be fine. If you want to know for sure if it's okay, this here is the best way to gather that information. The effective PPI. This is exactly that example I told you just before. If your image is 72 pixels per inch, but you've shrunk it down, the pixels get smaller, so the effective pixels per inch goes up. If that's over 300, your image is going to be fine when it prints. So that's a good thing to be aware of. Here's something that can go wrong. All of my images now are sitting on this folder called, in here, no, where is it? I think it's sitting in my downloads, images to correct. Okay, this is a perfect example. I've got it sitting in my images to correct folder. I've got it sitting in my downloads folder. That's not a good place to have it.
Is that automatic?
No, this is just where I put them. Yep. If, say, I say, right, no, I want to put this on my desktop and I want to put it inside my folio folder and I'm going to put it there, okay, that makes sense. But now watch what happens. When I go back to InDesign, see this? Bad news. I moved it, but InDesign's still looking for it in my downloads folder. If I make my PDF now and send it to print and spend my $100 to get it all nicely bound and everything, it's going to be a massive waste of money. Because all of my images, if they look like that, if any of your images look like that, they're going to be really bad quality when you print. So what you need to do is tell InDesign where you've put those images. So I'll go for this one here and I'm going to double click on it. And InDesign says, right, where's this image? And I say, right, it's in here, it's telling me which number I'm looking for up there in case I forgot. I say, there it is, and open. And when I do that, InDesign says, oh, I found the other ones as well, because they're in the same location. Excellent, all of these are gone. Let's assume now that you've finished your entire folio, and you're ready to make a PDF and take it down to Dinkum's or Classic Color or wherever you choose to go. You're now going to make a PDF. And I like to go straight in here and choose high quality print. Okay, this is what you want, high quality print. Okay. Give it a name, choose where I want it to go. Save. Now I need to do a few things in here. What do I need to be conscious of in here, do you think? So this is going to take care of the resolution just by me changing that to high quality print. This will take care of most of it. In fact, there's really only one thing that doesn't take care of, and that's my bleed. So what I need to do is go to marks and bleeds. See how it's turned off? There's no bleed. I need to tell it to use bleed. And if I'm adding bleed, you should ask your printer, but most of the time, if you add bleed, you need to add crop marks so they know where to cut. And then I'll come down here and I'll export that. It looks like nothing's happening, and if you've got a big document with heaps of high-res images, that might take 5 minutes to work, okay? But when it's done, it'll open up, and here's my document here like this. Notice I haven't done it as, there's an option to make it spreads. People see it and think, oh, I must have to do that. But you don't want to do that. You leave it as individual pages. Then, when you take it to the printer, they turn it into a book. I can do it on here. See, I've got the option to make a booklet there. And that puts all my pages in the right order and next to each other for a booklet. Yeah? So that's the way you want to do it. Any questions?